The story begins in the rugged lands of Persia's modern-day Fars or Iran, where a small but ambitious clan, the Achaemenids, first rose. Their name came from Achaemenes, a semi-legendary patriarch whose descendants would craft one of the greatest empires of the ancient world. For centuries, these Persian tribes lived under the shadow of stronger powers like the Medes, Assyrians, and Elamites. Yet from this modest origin, destiny prepared them for greatness. In the unforgiving mountains of Persis, where shepherds roamed and stones were more plentiful than crops, a child came into the world, Cyrus, the son of Cambyses. The Magi murmured that fire accompanied him. As he slept, Ahura Mazda's winged spirit, the Faravahar, came down to crown his head. Assyria had crumbled, Babylon was losing its strength, and Egypt remained feeble with age. From a humble shepherd's dwelling, the one chosen by destiny rose. For generations, the Persians had lived as vassals of the Medes, bound beneath the rule of King Astyages. The Medes controlled the northern plains, their armies strong, their fortresses unyielding. The Persians, though proud, were shepherds in rugged mountains, tributaries rather than masters. Cyrus, young and ambitious, saw a different destiny. Legends whispered he was born under omens of fire, that the gods themselves had marked him for greatness. The first clash was desperate. The Median armies, better armed and more numerous, swept down upon the Persians. But fate turned when many of Astyages' men deserted, weary of their king's tyranny, drawn to Cyrus's vision of unity. The battlefield dissolved into chaos, and Cyrus pressed his advantage. After his victory he entered Ecbatana, the Median capital, open to him. Unlike conquerors of old, Cyrus did not enslave his foes or raze their city. Instead, he honored the Medes as equals, forging a new crown that united both Persians and Medes. The chains of vassalage were broken, and from the mountains of Persis a kingdom was born. No sooner had Cyrus secured the east than a lion stirred in the west. Croesus, king of Lydia, richest man of his age, looked with alarm upon the rising Persian power. The oracle of Delphi told Croesus, "If you cross the river Halys, you will destroy a great empire." Proud and overconfident, Croesus thought it meant Persia would fall, not his own kingdom. The Lydian cavalry thundered across Anatolia, their horses clad in armor, their spears flashing like bronze fire. Cyrus, facing this mighty host, devised a stratagem. At Thimbra, he placed camels in his battle line. Their stench terrified the war horses, who reared and bolted, throwing Croesus's formation into disarray. With ruthless precision, Cyrus's troops swept through the chaos. Sardis, Croesus's glittering capital, fell soon after. All treasures gathered from across the Aegean were taken by Persian. And yet, Cyrus spared Croesus's life. Some say he even made him an advisor, for the great king of the West had become his prisoner. Thus Persia gained not only Lydia's wealth but also its knowledge and experience. To the south lay Babylon, ancient city of walls, rivers, and temples. The jewel of Mesopotamia, a city thought to be unconquerable. Its king, Nabonidus, had alienated priests and people alike by neglecting the worship of Marduk, Babylon's great god. Cyrus seized the moment, casting himself as chosen by both Ahura Mazda and Marduk to restore divine order. The Babylonian walls were colossal, enough to stop any army. But Cyrus was no ordinary commander. He turned to cunning rather than brute force. His engineers diverted the mighty Euphrates River, lowering its waters until his soldiers could march through the dried riverbed like ghosts in the night. When Babylon awoke, the Persians were already inside its gates. The city surrendered with little struggle. Cyrus liberated all captives and restored their temples, honored Babylonian gods, and ordered exiles, including the Jews, to return to their homelands. His decree was inscribed upon clay, the Cyrus cylinder, a testament to mercy and rule by law. Thus Babylon, once mistress of empires, became a jewel in Persia's crown. Cyrus was no longer merely king of Persians and Medes, he was king of kings. Yet Cyrus's hunger for conquest did not rest. Beyond his eastern front roamed the Massagetæ tribe, fierce nomadic people ruled by Queen Thamyris. They were masters of the bow, hardened by the steppes, fearless in battle. Cyrus, now an elderly ruler, sought to bring her realm into his control. But rather than unsheath his blade at once, he first offered his hand. He sent envoys carrying gifts and words of union, proposing marriage to Thamyris. If she accepted, the Massagetæ would be united with Persia in peace, and her people would share in the wealth and glory of his empire. But Thamyris saw through the offer. To her, Cyrus's hand was no gift but a chain in disguise. She rejected his proposal with scorn, declaring that the Massagetæ would not be swallowed by Persia, whether through love or conquest. Hurt by her refusal, Cyrus turned to war. He marched his armies eastward, seeking to claim by force what he could not win with alliance. At first, he relied on cunning. He left behind a camp heavy with wine, meats, and delicacies unknown to the nomads. When Thamyris warriors discovered it, they feasted greedily, unaccustomed to such luxuries. Drunk and unguarded, they fell easily to the Persian ambush. Many were slain, and among the captives was Spargapises, the queen's son. The prince, shamed by captivity, took his own life. Thamyris' grief turned to fury. She swore by the sun itself that Cyrus would be punished. She with her warriors met the Persians in open battle. Arrows darkened the sky, and the nomads' relentless assault wore down the Persian ranks. Amid the chaos, Cyrus himself was struck down. When his body was found, Queen Thamyris carried out her dreadful oath. She severed his head and plunged it into a skin filled with blood, declaring, "Drink your fill, you glutton for blood." Thus ended the life of Cyrus the Great, the shepherd who became an emperor, the liberator of nations, the one whose mercy was matched only by his ambition. His body was borne back to Pasargadae, laid to rest in a simple tomb, a modest shelter for a king who had ruled the greatest empire the world had yet seen. Cambyses, Cyrus' son, inherited the crown and turned his attention to Egypt. Egyptians at Pelusium wore cats on their shields, which the Persians regarded sacred. Some believe Cambyses utilized these heavenly monsters to hold back the defenders. Pelusium fell, and so did Memphis. Persia became pharaoh. However, Cambyses' reign was haunted. Whispers circulated that he was insane and had killed the Apis bull, which was sacred to Egypt. The truth was less important than rumors. Suspicion overtook him, and he died distant from glory in Syria, causing Persia to tremble. Darius, Hystasp's son, rose from the ashes, chosen by fire rather than by blood. 9 kings rose against him, but he defeated them. His triumph was inscribed on the Behistun cliffs with the words, "I am king by the grace of Ahura Mazda." Darius forged an empire greater than any before. Satraps governed provinces beneath the king's eyes and ears. From Susa to Sardis, the royal road was traversed by couriers at a speed greater than the sun's shadow. He minted the golden daric, coin of kings. He raised Persepolis, not for Persians alone, but for nations gathered under one crown. His dominion spanned 3 continents. Yet ambition pulled him west. Against Greece he marched, but at Marathon his army faltered before the charge of hoplites. The empire, for the first time, knew defeat. His son Xerxes vowed vengeance. He bridged the Hellespont with ships, an army vast as stars marching into Greece. At Thermopylae, Spartans and allies held a narrow pass, falling in glory. Athens burned in fire and ash. But Greek cunning lured the Persian fleet into tight passages at Salamis, where their numbers proved disastrous. At Plataea, Persian strength shattered upon bronze. Xerxes withdrew, the empire still mighty, but its aura broken. For a century Persia endured, rich and vast. Yet within marble halls, decay spread. Satraps ruled like kings. Nobles drowned in luxury. Intrigue poisoned the throne, daggers flashing in the shadows. The flame of Cyrus dwindled into ritual. The empire's peril no longer came from enemies without, but from rot within. Then came Alexander, son of Macedon, like a storm from the west. At Granicus, his cavalry charged across the river, scattering Persian horsemen. At Issus, Darius's vast host was trapped between mountains and sea. Alexander struck for the king, Darius fled. At Gaugamela, Persia gathered all its might, elephants, scythed chariots, hosts beyond counting. Alexander angled his phalanx and attacked. Darius fled from the final Achaemenid, who perished in the earth when his own betrayed him this time. In 330 BCE, Alexander visited Persepolis. Treasures melted into gold rivers as fire tore through its palaces. Instead of ending in peace, Achaemenes' mansion was destroyed by fire and treachery. The dynasty died, but its ideal lived on. Rome's lifelines were the roads of Darius. Cyrus's generosity was reflected in the monarchs and caliphs' decrees. Empires were sparked by the vision of unification under a single crown. As eternal as the desert sun, as enduring as the flame of Ahura Mazda,